afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Big Data, Big Dollars, Maximizing Profitability with Data Analytics. I am Lindsay Falconer, and with Automation Services, the U.S. distributor of IDEA data analysis software and Caseware Monitor. I will be moderating this session and the Q&A at the end. Our presenter today is Katrina Julia Kieselinchev from FitLife Creation. She successfully helps organizations identify operational inefficiencies through data analytics. She'll be showing us where we can start implementing our data analysis to achieve the greatest return. If you have any questions, please type them in the question tab on the right side of your screen. Most questions will be answered at the end of the webcast. Yes, we will be recording this session. We will send out the slides and video in the next day or so. We will not be offering CPE for this presentation. We have a lot of exciting information to cover, and I am excited to introduce Katrina as our speaker today. Hello, Katrina.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you and IDEA and Automation for just this opportunity to give this insight to our audience. And I wanted to first give major kudos to our attendees, because I was pleasantly surprised at the number that enrolled and that people are still popping on at 85 plus. So it's exciting to see that people are interested and excited about data analytics. So a little bit about me and my company, FitLife Creation, and some of the partners and just different things that I've had the pleasure of being able to impact in fraud, in data analysis and audit, and several other industries as well. So what we'll be covering on today's webinar is first big data insight, because a lot of times I get input from organizations or just people with questions on how do they even start, why is big data important, why should they make a shift, and just giving you perspective there on the landscape, how big is big data, why you should consider data analysis as our data grows exponentially, and also some insight into increasing customer service and the bottom line. So I'm a big proponent of looking at just the impact, not just from an auditing standpoint, but also from an operational standpoint, improving the company, improving just the impact and bottom line from a number of different angles. I'll also ask for some just audience input, and I'll see the questions alongside as well on who has maybe found money utilizing, whether it's Excel, whether it's IDEA, whether it's ACL or any other software solution. We'll also be talking about big data costs and the returns, and I'll also be sharing a tool that I've developed called the Bottom Line Maximizer and a real-life case example, and some assumptions that will demonstrate to you the potential of 1,000+% return on investment. And I'll also be sharing with you suggested areas for big dollars, as well as some global fraud insight, because in every case that I've incorporated data analytics, we've found fraud in some way, shape, or form. Some small, some large, and I'll be pointing out some things with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners as well. So I like to start with something funny. I found this cartoon from Dilbert. So consultants say 3 quintillion bytes of data are created every day. It comes from everywhere. It knows all. According to the book of Wikipedia, its name is Big Data. Big data lives in the cloud. It knows what we do. In the past, our company did many evil things. But if we accept big data in our servers, we will be saved from bankruptcy. Let us pay. Is it too late to side with evil? Shh, it hears you. So I just get a lot of input from the unknown parts of big data, and here's an excerpt from Link Analytics and a lot of statistics with data. hopefully that provided some additional insight maybe into some areas that you weren't aware of, and essentially that there is data is multiplying exponentially, and there is quite a bit of opportunity from every angle. So this is an excerpt from Wipro. You can see kind of in the right-hand corner, and this gives you a lot of insight into the 3 V's, so volume, variety, and velocity of data, and what creates the challenge. And you can see exponentially the majority of data you can see is in North America, followed by Europe. Variety, people to people, people to machine, and so on. 2.9 million emails are sent every single second. And this was as of this particular graphic. So my guess is it's exponentially increased. And then value increases, you can see in retail, and just the impact of big data that can be made with the right analytics, and the sales increases. You can see in the retail space, 9.6 billion. I also worked previously at Victoria's Secret, and I can tell you even back in 2004, it was exponentially driven off of real live data, real time, constantly being driven off average daily sales. Consulting, you can see, is second there, so you would think with the amount of dollars in consulting that would be a bigger impact. But ironically, what I often find is even so in this space, the organizations don't utilize data analytics as heavily as it could be used, all the way down to telecommunications. And 300 billion in the top right-hand corner is the potential annual value to healthcare. So surveillance, advanced fraud detection, and healthcare year over year is the #1 space of actually a fraud, just due to the opportunity as well as just the massive amounts of obviously integration in so many different sectors and areas and companies. Okay, and just some added components on trends. So you can see here, because again, I like to give insight that it's much bigger than simply the audit space. You can look at analytics, operational, system transfers, and utilizing data. I know IDEA will do that and basically normalize and cleanse the data as well as others. Business intelligence, and you can see in the top right-hand corner, analytics and visualization as well. So there's just so much in this space, and the opportunities are essentially endless. So change is hard. Why data analysis? So looking at, these are just some of the solutions, again, not an all-inclusive list. And you have, traditional audit. So now focusing specifically in the audit space. Traditionally, when audit started years and years ago, we had small amounts of data. We had pieces of paper. It was very easy to implement a traditional approach and actually be able to have that assurance that you had covered what needed to be covered. But now it's come to the point that data is so huge and so astronomically larger that if you are even doing a random sampling approach and not a top-down risk-based approach, well, you could have a legitimate random sample but still miss a fraud or still miss something huge because you just didn't happen to, your sample just didn't align to be able to trend to that. Versus with data analytics, and I was actually talking to a class about this yesterday at Emory, that even if you start with the auditing standards 5 approach that says, okay, let's take a top-down risk-based approach. And even if you do something like with accounts payable, that you take 100% of your data and you then, whether it's using a tool like IDEA or whether you pivot it and say, okay, let me isolate my data by vendor and by dollar amount, and let me basically filter it by the highest dollar amount down to the lowest dollar amount, and let me isolate and focus my analytics on the top 80% and see what's happening there with the vendors based off budget, based off addresses to employees, so many different things, and you're generating a much better and bigger return on investment of your time spent in the audit space, as well as the assurance, as well as creating a perception or a reality that audit can truly be a value driver. You can also determine trends off of that, identify red flags faster, and with tools like IDEA, you can do it so much faster, and the tests are built in some of the components like Smart Analyzer, and much, much faster than you ever could in setting up the formulas in Excel that are, of course, much more error prone. Continuous improvement, process improvement, and so on. And let me just check real quick and make sure there's no questions, okay? So here's a return on investment example from an operational perspective in sales.
Staples, the world's largest office supply chain, began in 1986 with a single store in Brighton, Massachusetts. Since then, the company has expanded worldwide and now operates in 27 countries across 6 continents. With customer and sales data collected from multiple channels, Staples fine-tunes its marketing campaigns to build loyalty among its most profitable customers.
I think the marketplace that we compete in is changing. I think that's true across all industries. Office products is no exception. I think the customer base who we try to service is changing very, very, very quickly as well. Customers are interested in faster and more efficient ways of ordering from us. My team is involved with a certain amount of analysis of behavior, trying to link the behavior of an offline customer to that same customer's behavior online to kind of complete the picture. But where I think we've gained some competitive advantage and try to continue to find and mine more advantage is by developing advanced levels of segmentation. Some of which are based on predictive modeling, some of which are based on more mining of the descriptive data that we have.
Having collected valuable data about customers and their buying habits, Staples sought a marketing campaign solution to utilize fully the customer insights. In SaaS marketing automation, Staples realized a solution to improve customer segmentation and overall campaign effectiveness.
The company makes such an investment to acquire and store all this data, and the fact that you hope in an ideal situation to be able to use that data to mine it and find those pockets or those nuggets that can really generate incremental sales and profit for the company. So when we were in the market for a new campaign tool, one of the big considerations in my mind was to say, well, we want to use a tool that both allows us to leverage some of that built-up expertise that we have, while at the same time providing features and functionality that meet the business needs now, as well as what our foreseeable needs would be in the future. And I think SaaS and SaaSMA really fit that bill quite well. I think one of the biggest things that SaaSMA did for us is it helped us to build that bridge to integrate all of the great work we were doing on the analytics side of our company with the campaign generation and execution side as well. So we could very quickly and easily go to market with findings and insight that we generated from the analytics side, bring that right into a campaign and very, very quickly execute that campaign and realize some significant benefit from it.
Backed by powerful analytics and a robust marketing campaign system, Staples reaches more customers with more effective offers than ever before.
The tool allows us to do certain types of campaigns that were never even possible before. One example I can give is when a customer purchases a technology item from us, let's say they come in and buy a printer, we look in their basket to see, did they also buy a cable? Did they buy an ink cartridge that fits the printer? If they didn't, we want to get that customer a marketing piece, preferably an email, soon after that purchase. So what SaaS lets us do is mine our transactional data very quickly and say, okay, click here to go online and purchase it. Here's a coupon to use if you'd like to make that order now. Without the integration that a tool like SaaS gives us, there would be no possible way for us to execute that campaign in any kind of a realistic or a profitable way. So it's really just unparalleled, the efficiency that it gives us to be able to market it that way.
With their most profitable customer segments receiving timely and relevant campaign information, Staples has seen significant business benefits.
We've derived a significant amount of business benefits from the SaaSMA implementation. We did a financial analysis of the implementation about a year ago, and we found that we were getting an internal rate of return on our own investment of 137%. on the SaaS MA implementation overall. It's as much of a slam dunk as I think you're going to see in this field, and we couldn't be happier with it.
So one of the things I want to point out is, regardless of the strategy with data analytics, regardless of what tool you use or what tool you choose to use, you can configure and do the same things across all the solutions. So if you want to do it in Excel, you can do it in Excel. It's simply going to take more time, and you're going to run into roadblocks with the speed. And just the errors are increasingly just because you're doing a lot of things manually. You know, ID is a database-driven tool, and you can do different tests ad hoc, and or there's some built in. I'll show some demos later on, and throughout the 5-part series. But you can take it a step further, which is when I went through my initial request for proposal process back in 2008 and 9 with Donna and several IDEA and then several other solutions, I selected Smart Analyzer for the sheer fact that it had all the tests pre-scripted. I could then record macros off of basically ironing out or minimizing the exceptions once I was comfortable with what the exceptions were actually producing. So you'll see always a lot of different examples from different providers or just different case studies, but again, keeping in mind that you can do the same thing across different solutions. It's all what works best for you, your organization, and just knowing that it's possible within. So one of the things that come up all the time is show me the money. How do I set up the value? How do I integrate it into my audit plan? How do I, incorporate it into operations? How do I have a company get focused on where the risks areas are and generate value? So here's a segment to kind of lighten it up and provide some humor as well.
Yeah, what can I do for you, Ron? You just tell me, what can I do for you?
It's a very personal, very important thing. Hell, it's a family matter. Are you ready, Jerry? I'm ready. I want to make sure you're ready, brother. Here it is. Show me the money.
Show you the money.
I want you to say it what you really mean, brother. Hey, I got Bob Sugar on the other line. I hear you say it.
Yeah, no, show you the money.
Not so soon. Show me the money. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
That's it, brother. You got to yell that shit. Show me the money. I need to feel you, Jerry.
Show me the money.
Jerry, you better yell.
Bet you didn't think that you were going to see a clip of Jerry Maguire on this webinar. So before we dig into the model and return on investment, I'd like to cover a couple of assumptions. And I set up this model and first started using it back in 2008 and 9. And it's just basically always refined depending on the company, depending on what we're looking at. So in this example, just to normalize it, the company size, assuming is $500 million. Let's just use a benchmark or a metric of 20% of spend. And let's assume that we're going to find 3% / $3 million. So very, very conservative. Was taught a long time ago, under promise and over deliver. Let's assume that license costs are reasonable estimates, and they're going to vary, and or components are not included in the model because this is going to vary based off what you have, based off what you decide, but this will provide you the framework to set this up, whether it's for your audit department, whether it's for proving a case to management, whether it's to set up kind of a roadmap for the year, just whatever makes sense for you. The license cost may vary based off the software, how many, and so on. This assumes a risk assessment based on an average of 80 hours at 150, which for many consulting firms is very conservative. Continuous monitoring, so assuming a full-blown implementation, again, conservative. Because some people may decide to internalize, some people may decide to do a partial, so it just varies. And so here, what I did was just list out several of the different providers. The ones in green, you can typically find pricing online or fairly easily. And one of the things I always point out as well is providers such as IDEA are usually very happy to provide a demo, very happy to let you have a test drive. In fact, in my course with AICPA that I partnered also with IDEA, we actually also include a 3-hour segment on test driving a number of tests, an IDEA and a couple other providers. And they will also typically provide a free trial and, of course, look at specific websites for additional info. So based off the assumptions I covered on the previous slide, that's where the 12,000 comes into play. That's where the 45,000 comes into play. And again, this is assuming a full-blown implementation. And then I'm going to show you my actual first case study after this, and it was actually exponentially more. And so with that average that I demonstrated before, you have a 5,000+% return on investment. And that's money that was there, i.e. duplicates, i.e. credits that weren't collected, i.e. payroll fraud. You take it, you name it, and it's just a matter of looking in certain directions with tests that are very, very strategic. So this was actually my first case study on this, and like I said, since then it's been developed further because, as you all know, the more we learn, the more we're able to focus and isolate. So this involved a third-party accounts payable audit. So the first year we did this with this particular company, we actually didn't do this internally. We outsourced it with a contingency firm. And the estimates I had, if you look at the bottom, was that it was 2.6 million. That across the 3 different, the total company, the 2 business units, but it was actually 3 locations, we were going to find about 2.6 million. So in each particular area, I simply estimated 1 to 3% depending on the control environment and just different operational knowledge and insight that I had of what was going to be found. And if you look to the right, we actually found $8.8 million on contract compliance alone. So that's where I learned where your highest return on investment is typically in contracts, whether an AR or an AP. We found substantial underbillings, and this particular case was in the energy space. And basically, there was convoluted contracts across regions, across states. So that was simply the items that we had negotiated, but we had not actually been billing. And we did 100% data analytics with all of these. And in addition, what was also discovered, which you don't see in the figures here, there was a number of items that were not negotiated on the AR side. So revenue we were literally leaving on the table of at least another 10 million, so jumping that up to 18 million. And in addition, on accounts payable, we found quite a few issues with overbilling on AP as well. So it pays to be in the weeds, so to speak. So suggested areas. So just depending on what your risk appetite is, like I mentioned on the prior slide, AP and AR are going to be your heavy hitting items because if you think about it, it just makes sense that that's where the most dollars come in and out. So that's where you're going to see the biggest impact. However, if you like to start on a smaller range, if it's something you want to stomach or team up or work internally, travel and per diem and mileage is a great area. And looking at the overlap between the two, I found different levels of executives that would report per diem and mileage while they were traveling in a different state. So any type of overlap or any type of opportunity that you have where an employee or someone can do multiple components, not only from a fraud perspective, but more importantly from an inefficiency standpoint. Like we found in one organization that they had bulk fuel on site, and they also every employee at each site had a fuel card. So of course the fuel spend was astronomical, because what was happening is people would end up getting fuel on site and then take the fuel cards and use them for personal reasons every day or on the weekend. So any type of issues you have there that operations or somebody has set up but isn't the most efficient or is just generating more spend than necessary, I would definitely suggest looking at. Payroll is a great area, especially comparing ghost employees. Any type of spend, running it across your active employee list, and especially looking at your active directory list. So asking, what I mean by that is asking IT for the listing of people and when's the last time they accessed the network. Because what I find time and time again, auditors or people make the assumption, which is not a good assumption because you can miss stuff, that HR has an accurate list. Well, if HR hasn't compared their payroll listing to the Active Directory list, well, guess what? People in the field forget to turn in a personnel action form. People in HR don't know necessarily what's going out, especially in decentralized companies. Another retailer I worked with, we found that globally, they had paid over $1 million in salaried payroll for people that no longer worked for the company. And they decided, once we found that, oh, we're just going to W-2 it because legally or different things, it's too much of a hassle to go back and forth. But at the end of the day, the cash still went out the door. And then, of course, I mentioned AP expenses, cost of goods sold, and inventory. And these are also AP, inventory, fixed assets. Several of these are incorporated into Smart Analyzer with pre-scripted tests as well. Expansion of markets and services. So you saw that with the SaaS MA implementation example. Just anything with sales, recognizing that don't just look at the contracts or the services as is. Isolate and analyze the data to see what else do your customers want, or what else could you complement and offer a service. Like in their case, it was the printer to a cartridge and triggering a communication. But if you look at and take a step back at your services and or your products, you can then realize, wait a minute, our customers have been asking for this, or sending, isolating and analyzing the data, but also potentially sending out a survey. What else would they want? Or looking and seeing what your competitors potentially offer, but then incorporating it into your suite of services as a complement. So that then causes you to be a market leader as opposed to playing in the competition space. Margins is another huge one in contracts. What is your gross margins? Not what were they sold for and what did the salesperson bring them in for. What are they actually executing at? And so another example is that there was a contract we were looking at with one company, and it was quote unquote sold at a 40% gross margin. And when we actually ran the analytics on it, it was a negative 11%. So, basically pointing to one of two things. One, the costs weren't properly estimated, and either way we were losing money. So really we were sitting at a negative 30 to 40% net margin, and also potentially a kickback scheme, because in this case it was that salesman's only contract, and it was a $12+ million annual contract. So another component that can also help you drive value, and just thinking about other ways of strategically using data analytics, is you can use the prior model as a starting point, considering fraud, and create a draft return on investment for your company, again, using a 1 to 3% area, 1 to 3% percentage per area based off your audit plan, based off risks, based off areas that you're looking at as well. And so some components I mentioned that I wanted to also kind of heighten is big data and fraud prevention. So the ACFE, you can see the link there, puts out an annual report to the nation, or a biannual report, on different actual fraud schemes. And what they do is they categorize it off of the 3 that you see on the left: asset misappropriation, corruption, and or financial statement fraud. And you can see, moving to the right, that although financial statement fraud is the lowest, it actually, as far as in frequency, it actually has the largest median loss. And year over year, what they find is that 5 to 6% of revenues across the board are attributable to fraud. And year over year, what they find, the number one way it's still discovered today, despite technology, despite external audit, despite all these different components, is by tip. And it typically takes at least 2 years before a fraud is discovered. So my point is always that if it's 5 to 6%, imagine what's not discovered when it takes almost 2 years to stumble across it via a tip. So there's just a lot of opportunity, not just in the fraud space, but also in the operational value. So here's a quick excerpt from Madoff, one of our infamous fraudsters. And I would encourage you also, just for awareness, to look at Harry Markopoulos. He was actually the one that was flagging the SEC to Madoff's scheme well before Madoff actually turned himself in. And the way he stumbled across him was because he was actually working in the mutual fund space, and his boss came to him and said, hey, there's this guy, and he's running these, this hedge fund with incredible returns. I want you to go back and re-engineer what he's done. So Markopoulos very quickly discovered either it was an insider trading scheme or Madoff had to be running a Ponzi scheme. And within basically some mathematical modeling and several other components, knew very quickly he was running a Ponzi scheme. And he was flagging the SEC for years. So again, there's a 60-minute special on that. But that's just another component of the power of data analytics, but at the same time, recognizing there's always massive people elements and things outside of our control. And imagine the danger or just the concerns, which Harry also talks about through the Department of Justice, in finding a $60+ billion scheme.
Now to an ABC News exclusive. Bernie Madoff is breaking his silence. The con man behind the biggest Ponzi scheme in history decided to speak out from his prison cell, and it is no surprise to us that one more time ABC's Barbara Walters got the big interview. She joined us now to tell us about it. And Barbara, Bernie has so much to say. But first, how did he seem to you personally?
Well, at times he was teary-eyed, but for the most part he was very composed. He has a little bit of a tic when he gets emotional. He is in the Butner Correctional Complex, which is a medium-security federal prison in North Carolina. He's with the general population. No cameras or tape recorders are allowed, but pens and paper are. And he told us, as you will hear, some very surprising things. In a 2-hour prison interview, Bernie Madoff told me that he is happier now than he's been in years. He said, quote, I feel safer here than outside. I know I will die in prison, but I lived the last 20 years of my life in fear. Now I have no fear because I'm no longer in control of my own life. When I asked him if he missed his old life, he responded, hell no. Madoff acknowledges that he should be punished, and he realizes that he destroyed his family. He said that before he went to prison, during his 4 months in a New York jail, he did contemplate suicide, but didn't have the courage to do it. He says now he never thinks about suicide. Today he is in therapy and has learned to compartmentalize what he did. He works during the day, but rarely sleeps at night and has horrible nightmares, he says. I asked him if he was depressed, and he said, yes, but the fact that I am functioning troubles me a great deal. You can't do what I've done without guilt. As for his wife, Ruth, Madoff says that after his son Mark committed suicide last December, Ruth said to him, let me go. He says they have not seen or talked to each other since. He added, Ruth doesn't hate me. She has no one. She told him that he had it easier in prison than she, saying, you are sheltered in there. No one is judging you. About his victims, Madoff said, quote, I understand why clients hate me. The gravy train is over. I can live with that. But the average person thinks I robbed widows and orphans. I made wealthy people wealthier. He says he does take full responsibility for his crimes, but he added, nobody put a gun to my head. I never planned to do anything wrong. Things just got out of hand. I don't believe I'm a bad guy or stupid. Today, the man who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history calls himself a glorified bad boy, working in the commissary for $170 a month. So, you know, it seems that right now almost everybody in the Madoff family is writing a book. He says that he isn't. He also says that he's treated with respect, especially the younger people, and that they look up to him, which he says is wrong, that they do it for the wrong reasons. Interestingly, in the next cell is Jonathan Pollard. Remember him, the convicted Israeli spy? Yeah. And Madoff says that even though he has no visitors, he does have friends in prison.
Did he say if anyone else is guilty, worked with anyone?
He says that his wife and sons knew nothing. He's been saying that before. But when he was arrested in 2008, he says the government said that he should, quote, name names. But he refused, and he said, I decided that I ruined enough lives, and it was my fault. I deserved to be punished. I deserved to go to jail. And he said that he was relieved to know that some of the investors that he's ripped off would get their principal back. But that remains to be seen.
Boy, that is just fascinating stuff, Barbara. Thanks very much.
George.
So just some more insight on application, and just thinking about another piece of useful info would be if you use Bernie's case or Google the top 10 accounting scandals, that can really give you insight on not only tests that you can run, but also how data analysis would have prevented fraud. You know, WorldCom, fixed assets, and just looking at within your organization examples, modifications, and ideas. So in summary, big data is complex and continues to grow. Big dollars reside in big data. Service providers such as IDEA and Smart Analyzer allow increased clarity, of course, as well as others depending on what's best for you. Case studies in areas ranging from customers, industries, and value. And wanted to give you, for those of you that may be new, a sneak peek on what IDEA looks like, just so you get a gauge, because I know I want to provide some time for Q&A. So you can see a couple of things I wanted to point out, and in the rest of the series I'll be pointing out more specific tests, but a couple basic things I wanted to point out for today is, number one, you can import so many different types of files. You can import via ODBC connection, you can import via SAP, of course your typical Excel file, a text file. One of the things I also love about IDEA is you can import a PDF. So this one feature alone so saved me with a Secret Service case I had back in 2009. And the help desk was phenomenal assisting with this, because in this particular fraud case, it had gone on for 6 years, and going back the initial 4 or 5 years, everything they could provide me was in Excel. However, the first 2 years that the scheme was going on, they had everything archived in PDFs. So, I said, no problem, send it over to me. I'll jump on the phone with, IDEA's trusty help desk, and they'll be able to walk me through it. And literally within 10 minutes alone, I had everything imported. So it was phenomenal. A couple other things too, just to see that you can always append fields. Some of the things are that, right now you can see, character, you can change different things to dates or to numbers as well, because this matters when you're joining different files, because you need to compare like to like. And then you can also do different things such as duplicate keys. This is a great test to look at for accounts payable, to look at for AR, to see if different people, are double reporting sales. You can look at credits post the fact, especially on AR post period. Summarization is great. So this is kind of what I referred to earlier on your pivots, or looking at your top-down risk-based approach, to look at, things by, let's say, customer number, by credit limit, and then you want a total and you want a sum, and you name it whatever the case is. And then you can see, and I could always go back and add a customer name, so I could see it there. But just to see if, just from a glance, let's say I'm looking at credit limits, that I want to see, okay, is anybody over the credit limit that I would expect to see? So who's this customer here? What's going on here? Do they have, is it something weird? Something's going on? Who's Benjamin or Bedouin Bourgeois? Because that's quite a bit, and then it's UAE. So, who approved this customer, assuming this is over the limit? So that's just one of the features. Just that I wanted to point out from a basic standpoint today. So again, we'll get into more functions across the different areas as we proceed with the series. And as you guys can see too, as an aside note, I do run on a Mac, and there is accessibility to incorporate off of what I learned was a virtual box, because before I had a Sony, so it was different. And we also ran a midterm at Georgia State with IDEA, and a lot of the students had Macs as well, and I had a wonderful student that helped out with that. So interested in more, we will be continuing the series with travel per diem and mileage, so that'll be part 2. We'll dig into some more specifics on payroll. So we will be skipping a week, but we will be sending out the recording, and then we'll look at accounts payable, cost of goods sold, and then the last component will be really diving deeper into income, AR, expansions and contracts and margins. And here's some additional options for, just to service all of you, and where you may want to gain more information or insight. As I mentioned, IDEA is happy to do demos, or if you want to inquire about purchasing, or I know when I first started with IDEA, I did 2 specific days of training just on IDEA, just to really, really get, dive in. And then if any of you want more information on live group sessions I do alongside a publication I have with AICPA and or advisory or academies, or a free consultation, please feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions. And let me see if we have any questions specifically. I don't see any. Lindsay, did you want to?
Yeah, I got one question via email, actually. And
Okay.
if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the, again, question box on the right side of your screen, just to kind of answer some ones I got. Overall, the slides will be sent tomorrow, as will a recording. One question that we got was, what is the best, first place you should start based on your experience?
So my answer to that is a little bit vague, because you have to see what's best for you. And so what I mean by that, I am a huge risk taker. So when I started with data analytics, even though I was a newbie, the reason why I needed to get it initially was there was a fraud case we had with, I was in Texas at the time, and it was a fraud case we had with a third-party vendor and contract employees. So I needed it for that reason specifically. So I dived right in, figured it out, and basically put together the case for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. But then immediately I was super excited, and ironically, a couple months later, I was in a chief audit exec role. And I literally just took the time to build out my audit plan, assuming 100% incorporation of data analytics. Because I'm a big proponent of, let's get it done initially, let's incorporate it from every direction, and then let's learn as we go and figure out what makes sense for year 2, for year 3, and so on. So if you're a heavy risk taker, that would be kind of my response, because you're going to get a much more substantial ROI, return on investment, if you approach it with everything from every direction, because there's massive amounts of data in every angle, and you immerse yourself in that space. If, however, that's overwhelming to you, or you feel like starting smaller, then I would recommend on the opposite end is, get your feet wet in one area. So you know yourself. So, it might be payroll, it might be travel, it might be, accounts payable. So pick an area and really get comfortable, because I kind of find, people facilitate between the two. And sometimes they need to build that confidence step by step, area by area, or they do, one component and then they decide to get help, so it just really, really depends on you individually and or you as an organization, not being afraid to ask questions and really just take a step back and say, what's best considering this company, considering my circumstances, my skill set. Because I'll tell people all day long, I love doing tests, I love doing, analytics, but other IT stuff, if I can't, I kind of adopted this from IDEA, if I can't figure something out through Google or implementing within 15 to 30 minutes, I will call for help. Because I'll recognize either I need to learn something more or maybe I need to team up with people. And, and every situation is different. So just really isolating and thinking about your particular scenario. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And just, as you said, calling for help. I know you mentioned our help desk before, but that's, probably our greatest resource that we have here at Automation with IDEA is we have a team. If you have any questions or just, it's something you haven't done before, reach out to our team and they can help you. And we also have a number of places where we have LinkedIn pages, Facebook, where you can network with other users to be that sort of safety net to be like, hey, help me out with this. So I am a big proponent of asking for help. It will help you be more productive in the long run. We had one more question. How do you address challenges associated with acquiring and importing large data sets?
I'm surprised I didn't mention that. That's a great question. So it makes me laugh because every organization has challenges with data, right? And another thing that I've learned throughout the process, that's another thing, I'm huge on being proactive. So my first time implementing IDEA back in 2009, I literally gave the manual and the software to the IT guys and to the software partner that I was partnering with on the consulting side too, that was going to automate the data for me out of Oracle. So I literally handed to him and I said, okay, here's what I'm designing. Here's what's going on. Here's all the tests in Smart Analyzer. Now, can you work with Oracle? Because again, this is beyond my skill set. And like Lindsay said, I am huge on, building a strong team. And can you work with IT? Because here's the specific field names in IDEA. And so a lot of times I find people when they do data analysis, they will repeatedly get the data from the source, i.e., SAP, Oracle, whoever, and then put it in IDEA or a different solution, and then go through every single quarter or every single time having to reconfigure the field names so the tests actually run. And I said, wait a minute, this is the definition of insanity. This is giving me a headache every time, even if I run the macro, because then what if something changed? So what I charged them with is I communicated up front, here's the screenshots, and then I said, hey, I need the data to come out via SharePoint. In this case, we were running it automated via SharePoint into a macro, into Smart Analyzer. I need it to come out with the exact field names that are in IDEA, because I want it to be seamless. Like I want us to address this up front. And then all I have to do at that point is wheedle through the exceptions. So in answer to that, number one, be proactive. Number two, involve your IT department up front or whoever you're going to partner with on that dimension to get the data seamlessly and match the tool. And so they really feel like they're partnered in the process and you're not going to them halfway through or on the back end and then you discover there's some sort of, data issue or, they're struggling with configuring it or you're struggling with changing it in the tool. So just the sooner, like even in the request for proposal process or even as you embark on however you're going to be integrating the tool, whether it's full-blown approach, whether it's partial, think about who you need. Like, okay, I need someone to help me with strategy. I need someone to help me with the tool component. Like I said, I went through 2 days of IDEA training. That was the first thing I did when I got the tool as in that chief audit role. I said, okay, I've played with the fraud case, and that was ad hoc, and I called, like Lindsay said, the help desk several times, stumbling my way through. And then I said, okay, but now I want to integrate it up and down, and I need someone to help me with this part. Yes, I can learn, but I can shorten the implementation time and start generating return for the company a lot sooner if I involve a team. And so he was huge on that component, and he even told me, he said, I really, and the IT department, and subsequently since, I really appreciate you giving me the screenshots. I really appreciate you taking that extra time, because I can't tell you how many times in IT someone will come to us with a data request and this, and this is missing, or we're kind of told in the back end, or we're an afterthought.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. As Katrina mentioned, we're kind of going to wrap up, but we will be starting on March 9th, offering an in-depth series of webcasts that's really going to dive into how you can use data analytics to dig deeper into your data. Specifically, we're going to cover T&E, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and more. The schedule is up on your screen, so be sure to watch your inbox, as registration information will be sent to you shortly. And again, feel free to contact us with any additional questions. You can reach Katrina directly at info@fitlifecreation.com, or you can reach out to me at marketing@automation.com. Thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you, Katrina, sharing your expertise and methods with us.
And thank you so much, Lindsay. I appreciate it, and I appreciate just automation also providing the opportunity, and hopefully everyone gains some insight and some things they may apply as well.
Sounds great. Hopefully we'll see everybody on March 9th.